The challenge is huge. Manhood, biblical manhood, to love and to protect your wives, to lead them well. And wives, what a challenge you have to be virtuous and to submit and to respect your husband. And also understanding that motherhood is your ministry. These are great challenges that Erika Kirk put out to the nation, to the world. And this is something that we shouldn't take lightly.
You're listening to Marriage Mania, where we are audacious, sagacious, and tenacious for the Lord to uphold godly marriages and to raise fervent children who are countercultural and stand for biblical truth.
Welcome back. I'm Tanya.
And I'm Michael.
And welcome to Marriage Mania. Today, I want to have this conversation where we're talking about this amazing challenge that Erika Kirk gave to the nation. This was a part of the memorial for Charlie Kirk, and we have not had the opportunity to actually talk about this here, but we're just really excited because it is our passion. It is our desire that we see a revival, of course, in this nation to point back to Jesus. And that memorial was all about Jesus. It was just glorified Jesus Christ. And I'm sure Charlie was absolutely proud looking down from heaven. And one of the things that Erika mentioned is biblical manhood, like to step up to the plate. And like, what does that even mean? Stepping up to manhood, to loving your wives, to protecting your wives, to be the leader in your home. And also to the wives, be virtuous, right? Submissive, respectful, honoring your husband, doing things that build up the home, a place that is safe for your husband to dwell in, and also to really pour out into the ministry of raising your children, because that is, motherhood is your first ministry, your children. And that is just so dear to my heart. And we talk about this so much so on this podcast, and we share a lot about this. So I want to just break down a couple things that she talked about, as we just heard in her speech, and we're talking about manhood. You know, she's giving a charge to men to love your wives, as Ephesians 5 talks about. And that's a deep love that men are called to do. And we talk about that a lot in week 1, week 2, and week 3 of the covering the role of a biblical husband. You can find that in the caption, so go and check that out. But like, to learn about loving your wife, Michael, give us just some insight around that deep statement, because it's so critical and it's something that shouldn't be taken lightly. Like, it's time for men to, I guess men don't like the word man up.
Yeah, which is kind of the opposite of what's been going on in society lately. There's an epidemic of just passive, uninvolved fathers and husbands in society. And it's like, what's causing that? And to me, you know, a big contributing factor is I think men in society have kind of lost their way, because, you know, before, a man's role was kind of defined very strongly, you know, I'm the protector, provider, and I protect my family. I provide for them. I give them security. I'm the leader of the family. And now we're kind of being told, no, we kind of co-lead, and you're also supposed to be involved in the home and taking care of the family duties and raising the kids. And so, you know, we both have a career and we both share in the household duties. And I mean, there's truth to that as well. But I think the problem is at least, especially with men, it's because we've kind of like lost a strong guidestone of where we're supposed to be heading. What exactly is my role? What is my purpose? What am I supposed to be doing as a father? What am I supposed to be doing as a husband? I've got all these 5 billion hats now that I got to take care of. Not only am I working, but I'm also having to figure out how to take care of the kids and teach the kids and get them ready and be in charge of that as well. And I'm just kind of confused what I'm supposed to be doing, what I'm supposed to be focusing on. And, you know, for many men, there's an escape hatch of just, well, let me just play video games or.
And on that note, I love what Charlie Kirk said, and I may not be quoting it right, but if you're playing video games, you pretty much need to just stop, because that's not manhood, right? Like you're playing video games when you should be focusing on your family and going out there making money and taking care of the family. But he's so like saying that's just so childish. And I know that there's a lot of people that play video games, but it's like, man up, right? Step up to the plate and walk out the role that God has given you.
I tell you what can really inspire a man to really get involved in his family, get involved in his marriage, get involved in raising the kids, get involved in helping around the house. And that is to validate his role as the protector and the provider and as the leader. That's what truly inspires a man, because that is at the heart of what that God has placed in us men, and the desire that we have to just, we want to protect, we want to provide. And if we can be affirmed in that, that's what really gets men to be encouraged to get involved in their families, get involved with their children. But to say that that's not your role, but do those things anyways, but I'm not going to give you those titles, that's what I think gets men uninspired and kind of lost in what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, those are great things, and I think that men do get lost because women tend to want to take control, and you know, we are supposed to really submit to that as wives. But like Erika really was honing in on the man, you know, just really saying you need to love your wife, love her, right? Because she's like the weaker vessel, and you know, Peter talks about that.
Yeah, so we talk about a lot of this in our books, The Covering and The Helper, which can be, be found in the captions, the details for that. But again, I think what really inspires men more is encouragement in that, thank you for providing for the family. Thank you for being that safe place where I can land, giving us security. Thank you for going out and working every day. Even if she works, I mean, he can thank her for that as well. I mean, it doesn't mean that we both can't work and we both don't have parts to play in the house and things, but it's just the part of what really inspires a man to harp on him for not doing these things can kind of be deflating and usually kind of gets the opposite result that you want. I mean, probably for most men, that'll just kind of cause them to deflate even more and not be inspired to do those things. But for a man that's like not as involved in his house, the few times where you see him do a few things that helps provide and protect the home, affirm him in that. Thank you for doing that. I just want to thank you for going out and mowing the lawn. I want to thank you for going out today and working. I just want to say today, I just appreciate all that you do for us, providing for our house. Just thank you so much. That's what really inspires me. I want to do this some more. How can I provide more? How can I protect more?
Yeah, I mean, those are great points. And I think it goes back to respect. And I think that's what men are really looking for. And we have lost that art as women because we've been fed lies by the culture of that women can be independent, women can also lead. And there's just that mentality. We're taking this to a biblical level where God is actually calling the wives to submit and to respect. And it's not their job to lead. I can't lead and do everything else. I already feel like there's too much to do in the home. And for me to lead everything would be even more overwhelming. And a lot of the respect and understanding submission, we talk a lot about that in week 2, 3, 4, and 5 in the role of a biblical wife that you can find in the caption. And so those are things that we really hone in on, and the importance of what women should be doing. And you can get that all in the biblical role of a wife, and understanding that through God's word and looking at the different women in the Bible that we talk about in the Bible study, the role of biblical wife. And so those are things that we really want people to understand. And so I see that Erika's call is so much deeper, and she's calling women to be virtuous. And what does that mean? We talk about that as well in the role of a biblical wife, is that virtuous woman, that Proverbs 31 woman looking well of the things of your household, and like knowing people know you at the gates. They know your husband. They know the wife, the hands that are doing all the work, and they know that she's highly respected. The husband's highly respected. These are things that can be done. And maybe it's not something that you were brought up to learn or understand. And we have just such a deep desire to really encourage the family to walk in these truths, because it's all about Jesus. And how do we reflect that? How can we reflect Christ if we're not walking in the roles that we're intended to walk in? Will it be perfect? No, it will not. And I don't think that the challenge is to be perfect. The challenge is put Christ first. Now begin to understand how you can walk in your role as a wife, as a husband, stepping up to the plate, to the calling of Ephesians 5. Husbands, love your wives. Wives, submit to your husbands as unto the Lord. I think the word submission has just been so corrupted. And we tackle that word in both the studies that you can find in the caption, where we really look at the husband and what does that mean to submit to God. And then we look at, the wife. What does that mean to submit to your husband, being the covering, the 1 Corinthians 11:3, and wives submitting, Ephesians 5:22. And I think the world twists that by saying, no, we're supposed to submit to one another. We're supposed to lead together. We're co-leading. We're co-submission. And that is not accurate. And so I love what Erika said is, wives, be virtuous, respect your husbands, take care of the homes pretty much, and submit, and submit. And it doesn't mean that you're losing yourself. And she also mentioned that your wife is not your slave. Your wife is not your worker, and you're not to mistreat her. She's your helper. In Genesis 2:18, she's your helper. God made woman out of man, and now they are one because they're married. And we can see that in a marriage, there's oneness, and we are called to help our husbands lead, not to hinder them from leading. And that's the whole focus of the Bible study. It's called the helper of the role of biblical wife, in the captions, where we really hone in on Genesis 2:18. And why does God say that? Because he says that man should not be alone. And how sad it would be if man was alone. But God called us to this high calling, and that is key. And so the challenge is to change lives, to change the nation, put family first, get married, have children, as Charlie Kirk would always say, have children, get married. These things are so critical.
And I loved how Erika challenged the men to lead with godly leadership. That this is not an authoritarian.
Yes.
I get to boss you around and get my own way.
Yes.
We are to love and lead as Christ loved and led the church and sacrificed his life for her. We're to lead not what's just to get my own way, but what's best for my wife, what's best for my family. I lead what's best for them. And, and I know many, in a sense, that's kind of mutual submission. And everybody's like, aren't we supposed to mutually submit? We submit to one another. Well, that when Ephesians 5 says submit to one another, that's a command to the church in general, for individual church members inside the church to submit to one another. And that caused Paul to go, okay, wait a minute though. I need to qualify this when we're talking about authority structures. And then he went to talking about boss, servant, parent, child, husband, wife, where there's an authority structure. And he talked about, in the case of husbands and wives, for husbands to lead their wives as Christ loves the church, and for wives to submit to that leadership. It's not a co-leadership, submit to one another as far as who leads the family. The submit to one another was for individuals in the church. In a sense, though, we kind of submit to one another in the sense that that the husband leads in what's best for his wife and his family, and he's submitting his own individual desires to get his own way to that. And then she submits to his leadership as steering the family in the direction that God has called him to go.
I'm so thankful for you. I really am. I'm thankful that you are really focused on Christ. And is our marriage perfect? It's not, but I'm grateful that we want to be people of God. We teach this stuff. We teach about marriage. We teach about discipleship. We teach about families, and is burning in our hearts to really get this message to families to understand their biblical roles, to understand how you can start building upon a foundation, which is Jesus Christ, and having a marriage that is solid, where the man is looking to Jesus to be able to lead his family, and the wife is submitting to God and also submitting to her husband so that she can allow him to lead. And it's just a perfect picture. And we walk in that daily. We pick up our cross daily, and we try and we strive. And that makes a beautiful picture for our children, because our children are watching our marriage. Our children will marry pretty much what we're reflecting. And so if we are reflecting Christ and we are showing what that looks like, Christ and the church, it really helps our children to really set a foundation on how they should be looking for a spouse and what they should be doing as either a husband or a wife, and us teaching them and discipling them along the way. And so the charge really is for men to step up, to man up per se, and walk out that role without fear and without condemnation, and like without the culture saying what you should and should not do. I love another quote that Charlie Kirk said was, when a man and a woman get married and his suit, he's usually dressed in the same suit he's dressed in when he's in a funeral. It's usually black and white or whatever, depending on the color. He might have like a flower or whatever, but he's dressed for death. And Charlie Kirk said the reason why is because he's dying to himself. He's dying to his singlehood. He's dying to the things of the world, because he's taking on a covenant, and he's becoming a man in the covenant because he's marrying his wife in the covenant with Jesus. And I love it. I may not have the right quote. You can check the captions. I'll put the quote in there because it's solid, and I love how he spoke about it. And it makes so much sense, because he's dressed for death because he's dying to himself, because now he is going to lead his family and become a man in the covenant that the Lord has called him in. And so I love that. And the charge deeply is get into God's word and begin to learn what it is to walk in the role of a biblical husband and what it means to walk in the role of a biblical wife. We do have those studies in the caption. You can check those out. And, what does that mean? And how do I do it? And how to get started? And how do I glorify the Lord in this walk? I mean, these are things that will become easier as you seek the Lord and you trust in him as he's transforming and renewing you day by day. But this is a challenge. And so if you are married, I challenge you. If you're a husband listening to this, I challenge you. If you're a wife, I challenge you. It's time. The time is now to center your marriage in Christ. Until next time.
God bless.